The Oregon sky hung over the town of Havenwood like a perpetually damp, grey blanket. The colossal pine trees, ancient and unblinking, dripped a steady rhythm onto the muddy track that served as the main street. It was October of 1888, and the chill in the air was more than just the coming winter, it was the town's very soul, cold and unforgiving. In one of these stark, timber-framed houses, the largest in the settlement, lived Elara Vance. At 17, her hair was the color of a forest fire, a shocking, vibrant red that seemed to defy the muted greens and browns of her world. But it was her eyes that truly set her apart, that drew the fearful whispers. One was the clear, sharp blue of a winter sky, the other, the deep, mossy green of the forest floor. To the grim, God-fearing folk of Havenwood, this combination was not a marvel of nature, but a mark of ill fortune, a witch's brand. Elara, attend me. Now. The voice of her father, Jedediah Vance, was as sharp and cold as a shard of ice. It cut through the quiet hum of the house, causing the pewter mugs on the mantelpiece to vibrate. Elara was in the small, glassed-in porch at the back of the house, carefully tending to the few hardy herbs she could coax from the unforgiving soil. She had been humming a tune her mother used to sing, a small act of rebellion in a life of rigid conformity. "Coming, father," she called, her voice a soft contrast to his harsh command. She wiped her hands on her apron and moved silently through the house. She knew that tone. It was the one he used before a sermon or before a punishment. It meant a verdict had been reached. She found him standing before the cold hearth, his tall, gaunt frame silhouetted against the grey light of the window. He was a pillar of the community, his piety as severe and unyielding as the granite cliffs that bordered the town. He did not ask her to sit. He did not turn to face her. "The trapper, Silas Blackwood, he has made an arrangement," Jedediah began, his words clipped. "There is a man among the coastal tribes, the ones they call the tidal king. He seeks a wife." Elara's heart, which had been beating a steady, cautious rhythm, began to hammer against her ribs. The tidal kin were spoken of in hushed, fearful tones in Havenwood. Heathens. Savages who worshipped the ocean. "Father, what are you saying?" she whispered, the words barely forming. Jedediah finally turned, and his own pale blue eyes, so unlike her own, held no warmth, only a grim resolve. "You are 17, Elara." A woman groaned. "And yet no decent man in this town, no man of God, will have you. Your affliction frightens them. It is a stain on this family, a constant question upon our good name." The words were not new. She had heard them in the whispers of the other women at the general store, seen them in the way the other children would cross the street to avoid her. "The girl with the devil's eyes," they'd mutter, "brings a blight on the harvest," the more superstitious would claim. "I did not choose this, father," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "It is how God made me." "Do not speak to me of God's will," he snapped, his voice cracking like a whip. "You are a burden I have carried since your mother, since she passed. She was a good, simple woman. She did not have these peculiarities." He took a step closer, his shadow falling over her. "But I have found a solution. A way to turn this family's shame into an asset." "A solution?" The word sounded like a death sentence. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the incessant ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall and the mournful sigh of the wind in the pines. "Mr. Blackwood tells me this coastal man, Kele, is a person of some standing among his people. More importantly, he is willing to take you. He finds the description of your appearance to be of interest. Elara felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. A savage, father? You would marry me to a savage? Jedediah's lips curled into something that was not a smile. Do you imagine you have a choice in the matter? Do you think some righteous young man from a good family is going to ride into Havenwood and rescue you from your own strangeness? The young woman straightened her spine, a spark of her mother's fire igniting within her. It is not strangeness, father. It is only different. It is a disgrace, he thundered. A disgrace I have borne for 17 years and can now, finally, be rid of. Blackwood has negotiated a generous timber contract for this arrangement. At least your curse will finally bring some profit to this house. Be rid of her. The words struck her with the physical force of a blow. He has already agreed. Without even seeing me. I do not require your consent, Elara, Jedediah said, his voice dropping back to its icy calm. I am your father. It is my right and my duty to see you wed. You should be grateful that anyone is willing to have you. When she asked, her voice cracking. Blackwood returns with the tide in 1 week. He will escort you to their settlement. 1 week. Just 7 days to say goodbye to the only life she had ever known, no matter how cold and lonely it had been. Elara thought of her secret collection of smooth, grey stones from the riverbed. She thought of Martha, the town's gentle herbalist, the only soul in Havenwood who had ever looked at her with uncomplicated kindness. May I at least know his name again, she asked, clinging to a sliver of something, anything, to hold on to. Kele, her father said, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. It matters little. Go and prepare yourself. That night, Elara lay awake in her small, stark room, staring out the window at the sliver of moon that managed to pierce the oppressive canopy of trees. Her room was simple, a narrow bed, a wooden chest for her few belongings, and a small, silvered mirror she tried to avoid. She rose and walked to the chest, pulling out a tarnished tintype. It was the only image she had of her mother, taken shortly before she married Jedediah. A woman with soft, kind eyes and a gentle smile, her hair a plain brown. Elara had always wondered where her own fiery colors had come from. Mother, she whispered to the silent image, what would you have me do? There was no answer, of course. Only the profound, lonely silence of the forest night, punctuated by the distant cry of an owl. The days that followed passed in a surreal hatch. Elara moved through her chores like a ghost, her own life suddenly feeling like something she was watching from a great distance. Martha, the herbalist, noticed the change immediately. Child, what troubles you so? The old woman asked as Elara helped her bundle dried lavender in her small, fragrant cottage. You have the look of a trapped bird in your eyes. Elara hesitated for a moment, then the story spilled out of her, a torrent of fear and resignation. Martha listened in silence, her weathered face a mask of sorrow, occasionally shaking her head and making small sounds of disapproval. That man has a stone where his heart should be, she murmured when Elara had finished. To trade you like a sack of flour. But what can I do, Martha? Elara asked, the tears she had held back for so long finally beginning to fall. I have nowhere else to go. I have no one. The old woman moved to her side and wrapped her in a hug that smelled of earth and chamomile. Her arms were thin, but her embrace was strong. Oh, my dear girl. Life deals us some cruel hands. But there is always a purpose, even if we cannot see it. She pulled back, holding Elara's face between her hands. Perhaps this Kele, perhaps he is not the savage you imagine. How can you say that? Father says they are heathens. Your father says many things to justify his own cruelty, Martha replied with a sad smile. But I have met some of the coastal folk in my time. They are different, yes. They live by the rhythms of the ocean, not the clock. But they are people of honor. They revere life in all its forms. Truly? Elara asked, a tiny seed of hope planting itself in her heart. Truly, child, Martha affirmed. And listen to me, she added, her gaze intense. You are special, Elara. Do not let the narrow minds of this town tell you otherwise. Your hair is like the sunset. Your eyes hold the colors of the world, the sea and the sky. You are a miracle. Miracles aren't real, Martha. Of course they are, child, the old woman insisted. And you are one of them. On the evening of the 6th day, Elara packed her small wooden chest. Her few simple dresses, her warmest shawl, the tintype of her mother, and a small wooden bird her mother had carved. She also secretly tucked away a small leather pouch containing seeds from Martha's hardest mountain flowers, a desperate hope to plant something of her own in this strange new land. Her father did not join her for supper that last night. Elara ate alone in the kitchen, the cornbread and stew tasting of ash and farewells. As dawn broke on the 7th day, Silas Blackwood arrived with 2 sturdy pack horses. He was a man weathered by sun and wind, with a thick grey beard and shrewd eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He greeted Jedediah with a curt nod, a man of business, not friendship. Good morning, Vance. The cargo is ready, he asked, his voice a low rumble. Elara flinched at being called cargo, but said nothing. Her father handed Silas a thick, sealed envelope. The timber contract, as agreed, Jedediah said. See that the journey is swift. It will be, Silas replied, tucking the envelope into his worn leather coat. It's a 3-day trek to the coast. We should arrive by dusk on the 3rd day. Elara's final goodbye was with Martha, who had come to see her off, defying the town's unspoken disapproval. The old woman whispered in her ear, remember, child, you are stronger than you know. And should things ever become unbearable, the path back to these mountains will remember you. You will always have a place with me. Thank you, Martha. For everything. Her father did not hug her. He simply gave a stiff nod. Farewell, Elara. I trust this man of the coast will know how to manage you. As the horses moved away from the town, Elara looked back one last time at the house where she was born. A single tear traced a path through the grime on her cheek. But alongside the grief, she felt a strange, terrifying flicker of curiosity about what lay ahead. The landscape began to change as they traveled west. The oppressive, dark pines gave way to moss-draped maples and ferns as high as a man. The air grew heavier, thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. Silas Blackwood was not a talkative companion, but he answered her questions when she dared to ask them. Those cliffs ahead, he said on the 2nd day, pointing with his chin, they mark the edge of the tidal kinslands. They've lived on that coast since before any white man set foot here. They are a proud people. They know every rock and every tide pool as if it were the back of their own hand. What is he like? Elara asked timidly. Kele. Silas scratched his beard, considering. He is a man of respect. Quiet. Strong. About 30 years old. He lost the woman he was to marry many years ago, in a storm. He has been alone since. Does he have children? No. That is why he seeks a wife now. He wishes to build a family. Elara nodded, a strange mix of dread and resignation settling in her stomach. At least he did not sound cruel, just a man seeking companionship, a family. On the second day, they stopped at a dilapidated trading post to water the horses. The few rough-looking men there stared at her, their eyes lingering on her hair and face. She was used to the looks, but they still stung. Pay them no mind, Silas grunted, noticing her discomfort. Men fear what they don't understand. Do you think Kele will accept me when he sees me? She asked, the question she had been holding in for 2 days. Silas looked at her, his expression unreadable. Girl, he already knows what you look like. I described you to him in detail. It was that very description that caught his interest. My appearance? The tidal can have their own ways of seeing things, Silas explained, a rare note of something other than gruffness in his voice. To them, someone like you, someone marked by the world's great colors, might be seen as special. Touched by the spirits of the sky and the sea. Elara felt a tiny, fragile flame of hope ignite in her chest. For the first time, she considered that this new place might offer the one thing she had never known, acceptance. On the third day, the roar of the ocean became a constant presence. The air was cool and clean, saturated with the smell of salt and wet stone. Elara had never seen the ocean, and when they finally crested a hill and the vast, grey-blue expanse opened before her, she gasped. It was more beautiful and terrifying than anything she had ever imagined. We are almost there, Silas announced as the sun began to dip towards the horizon. His village is just beyond that headland. Elara's heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against her ribs. In minutes, she would meet the man who would be her husband, the man who would determine the rest of her life. She smoothed her hair and pulled her shawl tighter, a futile attempt to look her best. As they rounded the headland, she saw it. A small, sheltered cove, where a stream of fresh water met the sea. There were structures built of driftwood and stone, their roofs covered in living turf, blending almost seamlessly into the green cliffs. Smoke curled from several huts, and figures moved among the buildings with a quiet purpose. It's beautiful, she whispered. Kele is a good leader, Silas said. He has managed to hold on to the old ways while learning what is needed to deal with our world. As they drew closer, several people emerged to greet them. Elara saw men and women of all ages, their skin weathered by the sun and sea, their dark hair braided with shells and beads. They looked at her with open curiosity, but not with the fear or contempt she was so used to. And then she saw him. A tall man emerged from the largest of the dwellings, walking towards them with a steady, graceful stride. His hair was as black as a raven's wing, tied back from a strong, angular face. His skin was the color of burnished copper. He wore simple buckskin trousers and a woven tunic, and a necklace of polished abalone shells gleamed at his throat. But it was his eyes that captured her. They were the color of the deep ocean just before a storm, dark and full of hidden depths. And as they rested on her, Elara felt as if he could see straight into her soul. Kele stopped before them and spoke to Silas in a low, melodic tongue, before switching to fluent, though accented, English. "Welcome, Silas. The journey was good." "It was good, Kele," Silas replied. He gestured to Elara. "This is Elara Vance." Kele turned his full attention to her, and the world seemed to fall silent. He looked at her for a long moment, and she braced herself for the flicker of disgust or disappointment she knew so well. Instead, she saw something she had never, ever seen directed at herself. "Reverence." "Sea glass," he whispered, the word a soft caress on the salty air. And though Elara didn't understand the name, the tone of his voice, filled with a quiet wonder, sent a shiver down her spine. "Sea glass?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Kele smiled, and his entire face was transformed, the severity melting away to reveal a surprising warmth. "It is what I will call you. Your beauty is like the treasures the ocean gives to the shore after a storm. One eye the color of the deep sea, the other the color of the endless sky. A perfect balance." For the first time in her entire life, Elara Vance felt beautiful. The first days in the Cove of Whispering Tides felt like a waking dream to Elara. Everything was new, the constant roar of the surf, the scent of seaweed and wood smoke, the customs of the tidal king, even the way the light slanted across the water. But the most startling difference was the way she was treated. Kele had shown her to her own dwelling, a small but warm lodge made of weathered driftwood, separate from his own out of respect for tradition. "When you are ready," he had told her on that first evening, "we will celebrate our joining according to the ways of my people, and of yours, if you wish it. But there is no hurry. First you must feel that this is your home." The lodge had a comfortable bed of soft furs, a small stone hearth, and a window that looked out over the churning sea. On a small wooden table, there was a clay vase filled with wild flowers, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the muted tones she was used to. "Who brings the flowers?" she asked Kele during their meal on the third morning. They ate together in a communal longhouse, the air filled with the quiet chatter of the community. "I do," he answered simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Silas told me you had a fondness for growing things." Elara felt a blush rise to her cheeks, astonished that he would notice and remember such a small detail. "Yes, I do. At my old home, I had a small garden." "Where you grew what?" Kele asked gently, sensing her hesitation. "Where I grew the flowers no one else wanted," she confessed. "The ones that grew crooked or had strange colors. My father said it was a waste of good soil." Kele looked at her, his expression serious. "Your father was wrong. The most beautiful things are often the ones others do not know how to value." Those words stayed with Elara throughout the day. As she explored the cove with Nia, Kele's sharp-witted younger sister who spoke excellent English and had offered to be her guide, she couldn't stop comparing Kele's words to her father's. "How did you learn our language so well?" Elara asked Nia as they walked along a path carved into the cliffside. "Kele is a forward thinker," Nia replied with obvious pride. "When he was a boy, he spent time with a shipwrecked scholar. He learned English and how to read and write. He says knowing the language of others is the key to protecting our own. Protecting them." "The world is changing, Seaglass," Nia said, using the name that everyone in the village now called her. At first it had felt strange, but she was beginning to love it. It was so much better than the whispers of witches' mark or bad omen she had endured her whole life. The loggers push down from the mountains. The big fishing ships come closer to our waters. Kele believes we must understand those who would be our enemies, not just fight them. May I ask you something personal? Elara said after a moment. Of course. What happened to his first wife? Nia stopped and looked out at the distant horizon. Her name was Lyra, she said softly. It means song of the sea. She was my best friend and promised to Kele since they were children. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Do not be sorry, Nia interrupted with a sad smile. It is good that you ask. She was lost in a sudden squall while they were gathering mussels on the outer rocks. It was a terrible accident. For many seasons, Kele's heart was a closed fist. We thought he would let the grief consume him. But slowly he healed. And last year, he said he was ready to find a partner again. They walked in silence for a time, listening to the cry of the gulls and the crash of the waves. Finally, Nia spoke again. Do you know why he chose you? My father said it was because of how I look. Nia laughed, a warm, musical sound. Your father understands nothing. You were chosen because when Silas told Kele your story, he saw in you someone who had suffered unjustly, as he had. And when he told him about your garden of rejected flowers, he knew you had a kind and patient heart. Nia added with a mischievous grin, and yes, he also said that any woman who could make a garden bloom in the shadows of Havenwood must have magic in her hands. That afternoon, Kele invited her to walk with him through the village's communal gardens, which were nestled in a series of terraces on the cliff face, sheltered from the harshest winds. Elara was amazed at the variety of plants thriving there, vegetables she didn't recognize, medicinal herbs, and bright, hardy flowers she had never seen before. How do you grow so much here? She asked, gently touching the petal of a salt-sprayed purple blossom. Each plant has its needs, Kele explained, kneeling beside her. Some need more sun, others more shade. Some thrive on the sea mist, others need the fresh water from the stream. The secret is to understand what each one needs to flourish, and to give it to them. Just like people, Elara whispered, without thinking. Exactly like people, he confirmed, his deep eyes meeting hers. Your father never understood what you needed to thrive. The raw truth of his statement left her speechless. How could you know that? You barely know me. I know the hurt in your eyes, Kele answered softly. It is the same hurt I carried for a long time. The pain of not being seen for who you truly are. But I see you, Seaglass. He stood and offered her his hand to help her up. And every day, I see that hurt healing, just a little. That night, Elara lay awake, thinking about their conversation. From the window of her lodge, she could see the stars, brighter and more numerous than she had ever imagined. The mountain air had been clear, but here, the sky felt vast and alive. She got up and stepped out onto the small porch of her dwelling. In the distance, she could see the warm glow of a central fire where several community members were gathered, their quiet songs and laughter drifting towards her on the breeze. You cannot sleep. Kele's voice made her jump. She turned to see him walking toward her from the direction of the fire, a silhouette against the starlight. I was thinking, she replied. About what? How different everything is here. In my town, when night fell, everything became silent and closed. Here, even in the darkness, it feels alive. Kele came to stand beside her, leaning on the porch rail and looking up at the sky. My people believe the night is not the end of the day, but the beginning of another kind of life. The spirits of our ancestors walk among the stars, the nocturnal plants open their blossoms, the creatures of the tide pools come out to hunt. The darkness is not empty. It is full of secrets and wonder. That's a beautiful way to see it. How did you see the night in your town? Elara thought for a moment before answering. As a hiding place. During the day, everyone could see me, whisper about me. But at night, in the dark, I was just me. No one could look at me with pity or fear. You do not need to hide here, Kele said, turning to face her. Here you are sea glass. And the sea and sky do not hide from the stars. The next day, Nia took her to meet the other women of the village as they sat mending nets. Elara had been nervous, fearing the same rejection she had always known. Instead, she was welcomed with friendly curiosity and a genuine warmth. Your hair is so beautiful, exclaimed a young woman named Lyra. It is the color of the sunset on the water. And your eyes, added an older woman, they are like the calm sea and the summer sky. The women immediately included her in their tasks. They taught her to weave with techniques different from any she knew, to prepare traditional coastal foods, and to identify edible seaweeds. Elara was astonished at how quickly she felt at ease. Why are you all so kind to me? She asked Lyra as they worked together. Why should we not be? Lyra answered, genuinely puzzled. You are part of our family now. But I am different. I am an outsider, and my appearance, your appearance is beautiful, Lyra interrupted firmly. And as for being an outsider, are we not all children of the same earth? The lines on maps are drawn by men, not by the spirits. That afternoon, as Elara was helping prepare the communal evening meal, Kele approached her. Would you walk with me tomorrow? To gather herbs. There is a special place in the high cliffs I would like to show you. I would love that, she replied, feeling a thrill of anticipation she hadn't experienced in years. They set out early the next morning, when the mist still clung to the cove and the air was crisp and clean. Kele carried a leather pouch and a carved walking stick, while Elara carried a woven basket. The path wound its way up the side of the headland, passing through groves of vine-stunted cypress and meadows of resilient wildflowers. Kele showed her the different plants, explaining their uses. This is sea thrift, he said, pointing to a tough, pink-flowered plant growing from a crack in the rock. We use its roots in a tea to calm a troubled spirit. Troubled spirits. Sadness, fear, anger, he clarified. All the feelings that can make the soul unwell. Elara gently touched the plant's hardy leaves. Do you think it could help me? With what? With the painful memories. Sometimes, when I am alone, I can still hear my father's voice, telling me I am a burden, a shame. Kele stopped walking and looked at her, his expression full of compassion. Those are not your words, sea glass. They are the words of a man who did not know how to see the beauty before him. Do not make them your own. It's hard not to believe them when you've heard them your whole life. I know, he said softly. But here you have the chance to hear different words. True words. They continued their climb until they reached a small, hidden plateau, a circle of green surrounded by towering sea stacks. In the center, a small spring bubbled up, forming a crystal-clear pool surrounded by the most beautiful flowers Elara had ever seen, their colors electric in the bright coastal light. "This is a magical place," she breathed, looking around in awe. "It is sacred to my people," Kele explained. "This is where I come when I need clarity, when I seek answers." They sat by the spring, and Kele began to carefully gather specific plants. Elara watched him work, admiring the deftness of his movements and the clear respect he had for every plant he touched. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a while. "You chose to marry me without even knowing me. Weren't you afraid we wouldn't fit?" He stopped his work and sat beside her on a smooth, flat rock. "Do you know what my name means?" "Nia told me it means forest's strength." "Yes, but it is more than that. In our stories, the forest's strength is not just in its biggest trees, but in its ability to adapt, to find a way to thrive in any condition. In the wind, on the rocky soil. When Silas told me your story, I knew you had the spirit of the forest within you. You are a survivor." "I don't feel very strong," Elara admitted. "True strength is not always loud," Kele replied. "Sometimes it is the quiet power of a single flower breaking through a rock to reach the sun." They spent the rest of the day in that sacred place, talking about their lives, their dreams, their fears. Elara told him about her hidden collection of river stones, about the lonely nights staring at the stars, about the mother she never knew. Kele told her about his own childhood, about his people's traditions, about the challenge of keeping their culture alive in a rapidly changing world. As evening began to fall, they started their journey back to the cove. Elara felt different, as if something deep inside her had shifted during that day. For the first time in her life, she had spoken freely, without fear of judgment. "Thank you," she said to Kele as they walked the path, lit by the golden light of sunset. "For what?" "For listening to me. For not making me feel strange or wrong." "You could never be strange or wrong," he answered. "You are exactly who you are meant to be." That evening, at the communal dinner, Elara truly felt like a part of the group for the first time. She joined in the conversations, laughed at the stories, and even shared a tale about her life in Havenwood that made everyone chuckle. After the meal, as she was helping to clear away the wooden bowls, Lyra approached her. "You seem different tonight," the young woman observed. "Different how?" "Brighter. As if you found something you had lost." Elara smiled, realizing Lyra was right. She had found something she never even knew she was missing, a place where she could simply be herself. Later, as she was preparing for bed, she heard a soft knock on her door. When she opened it, she found Kele holding a small, carved wooden box. "I thought you might like this," he said, handing it to her. Inside was a single, tiny plant, its white, star-like flower glowing in the moonlight. "It is a moon blossom," he explained. "It only blooms at night, and only in a place where it feels completely safe." Elara took the box carefully, feeling tears threaten to spill once more. But this time, they were tears of gratitude, not pain. "Like me," she whispered. "Like you," Kele confirmed. "Sleep well, my sea glass." As she watched him walk away into the darkness, Elara felt something she had never experienced before. The certainty that she had, finally, found her home. 3 weeks had passed since Elara's arrival, and each day she felt more woven into the fabric of life in the co. Her mornings were spent in the terraced gardens, where she had begun to apply her own knowledge, creating a small corner dedicated to the mountain flowers she'd brought. The vibrant, unfamiliar blooms were quickly becoming a source of delight for the whole village. Her afternoons were for learning the tidal king's traditions with Nia and the other women. She learned to weave waterproof baskets from treated kelp, to prepare herbal remedies from seaweed, and to understand the cycles of the tides that governed all life in the co. But it was her evening walks with Kele that she cherished most. After the communal dinner, they would stroll along the moonlit beach, talking about everything and nothing. Elara had begun to teach him the folk songs she remembered from her mother, while he told her the ancient stories of the stars and the spirits of the ocean. One morning, as she was tending her mountain flowers, Nia approached her, her expression both serious and joyful. "Sea glass," she said. "Kele has spoken with the elders. He wishes to hold the joining ceremony next week under the full moon." Elara felt her heart leap. Though she knew this moment would come, now that it was here, she felt a dizzying mix of excitement and nerves. What do I need to do?" she asked. "First," Nia said, her tone gentle but firm, "you must be certain this is what you want. Once the ceremony is done, you will truly be his wife, and he your husband. It is a sacred bond, not to be taken lightly." Elara thought of the past weeks, of Kele's constant, quiet kindness, of the way he made her feel valued and beautiful. She thought of the community that had welcomed her like family, of the garden thriving under her care, of the starlit nights filled with conversation and laughter. "I am certain," she said finally, her voice clear. "More certain than I have been of anything in my life." Nia beamed and embraced her. "Then we begin the preparations. There is much to be done." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. The women of the village organized themselves to prepare everything for the ceremony. Lyra and the younger women were tasked with gathering iridescent shells and colorful sea glass for decorations, while the elder women prepared the traditional foods that would be served at the celebration. Elara was taken to a special, secluded lodge where she would spend the 3 days before the ceremony in spiritual preparation. Nia explained it was a tradition for a bride-to-be to spend this time in reflection, purifying her spirit for her new life. "What exactly am I supposed to do?" Elara asked as Nia helped her settle in. "Meditate. Pray if that is your way. Think on what this union means to you. You will also fast, eating only fruits and drinking water from the sacred spring. Kele is doing the same in the high cliffs with the elders. You will not see each other again until the ceremony." The 3 days of preparation were a transformative experience for Elara. Free from the distractions of daily life, she had time to reflect deeply on her past and her future. She thought of her mother, who had died without knowing her, and wondered what she would think of her daughter marrying a man from the sea. On the second day, while meditating by the window, she had a strange, comforting vision. She saw a beautiful woman with kind, smiling eyes, looking at her with love and pride. Though she had never truly seen her mother, she knew, instinctively, that it was her. "You are doing the right thing, my girl," the vision seemed to say. "You have found your place in the world." When Elara blinked, the vision was gone, but a profound sense of peace and approval remained with her. On the third day, the women came to prepare her for the ceremony. They brought her a beautiful dress they had been secretly making, a unique fusion of her old world and her new. It was made of soft, white deerskin, embroidered with threads dyed in the vibrant colors of her mountain flowers, and adorned with tiny, polished shells and beads of turquoise. "It's the most beautiful dress I've ever seen," Elara whispered, touching the delicate embroidery. "Every woman in the cove contributed something," Nia explained as she braided Elara's hair with ribbons and tiny, fragrant blossoms. The shells were gathered by the children. The deerskin was prepared by the hunters. The threads were dyed with the very plants you grew in your garden. Elara felt tears welling in her eyes. "I never imagined I could feel so loved." When she was ready, the women escorted her to the place where the ceremony would be held, the sacred plateau where she had spent that special day with Kele. It had been transformed into a magical stage, decorated with flowers, glowing torches, and woven tapestries that fluttered in the evening breeze. The entire community was gathered in a circle. Elara saw the familiar faces smiling at her with affection and approval. At the center of the circle stood the community's shaman, an old man with a face as weathered as the cliffs, named Taran. And then she saw Kele. He stood on the opposite side of the circle, dressed in a ceremonial tunic decorated with abalone and feathers. His dark hair was loose, shining like black silk in the torchlight. But it was his eyes that held her captive. They looked at her with an intensity and tenderness that made her feel like she was the only person in the world. Taran began the ceremony, speaking in the melodic tongue of his people. Though Elara didn't understand all the words, she could feel the power and solemnity of the moment. "Today," the shaman said, switching to English to include her, "we join not just two people but two worlds. Kele, son of the sea, and Sea Glass, daughter of the mountains, become one under the blessing of the spirits and the full moon." He beckoned them to the center of the circle. When they stood before each other, Taran asked them to join hands. "Kele," the shaman said, "do you promise to protect and honor Sea Glass, to be her companion in joy and sorrow, and to walk beside her on the path of life?" "I promise," Kele answered, his voice deep and steady, his eyes never leaving Elara's. "Sea Glass," Taran continued, "do you promise to be Kele's faithful companion, to share his burdens and his joys, and to make for him a home filled with love and respect?" "I promise," Elara answered, surprised by the strength in her own voice. The shaman then took a cord woven from sweet grass and gently bound their joined hands. "As this cord unites you physically," he said, "may your hearts and spirits be united for all time." He then offered them a single shell filled with water from the sacred spring, first to Kele, who drank, and then to Elara. "May you share not only the water of life, but all the resources and blessings the spirits grant you." The ceremony continued with traditional songs and dances. Elara felt transported to a world where music, nature, and community merged into one great celebration of life and love. When the formal rituals were complete, the true feast began. There was roasted salmon, venison stew, breads made from cattail flour, and fresh berries. Musicians played on wooden flutes and hide drums as couples danced around the central fire. Kele led Elara to dance, and though she didn't know the traditional steps, he guided her with such patience that they were soon moving together as if they had been doing so their entire lives. "How do you feel, my wife?" he whispered in her ear as they danced. "As if I have woken from a long, cold dream," she answered. "As if my real life is just beginning." Mine as well, Kaylee said, squeezing her hand gently. You are the most beautiful gift the spirits have ever given me. The celebration continued late into the night. Elara received blessings and gifts from every member of the community, hand-woven blankets, jewelry, gardening tools, and small sacred objects to protect their new home. When the party finally began to wind down, Kele led her to his own lodge, which had been decorated with flowers and candles for the occasion. It was larger than her temporary dwelling, with a wide bed covered in soft furs, a stone fireplace, and a large window that looked out at the moonlit sea. It's beautiful, Elara murmured. It is ours, he replied. Our home. They sat together on the edge of the bed, suddenly aware that they were truly alone for the first time as husband and wife. Elara felt a flutter of nerves. Are you afraid? Kele asked gently. A little, she admitted. But not of you. It's just everything is so new. There is no rush, he said, taking her hand in his. We have our whole lives to learn each other. That night they talked until dawn, whispering their hopes for the future, their dreams of having children, their plans for expanding the village gardens. When they finally fell asleep, they were curled in each other's arms, certain they had found not just a partner but their true home. The weeks that followed were their honeymoon, though they never left the cove. Elara settled completely into her new life, blending her routines with Kele's. In the mornings, they worked together in the gardens. In the afternoons, he taught her how to navigate a small canoe in the calm waters of the cove, and she showed him new ways to terrace the soil she had learned in the mountains. One afternoon, as they were planting the last of her mountain seeds, Kele asked her a question that surprised her. Do you ever miss your old life? Elara thought carefully before she answered. I miss some things. I miss Martha. I miss the smell of the pines after it rains. But I do not miss the loneliness. Or the feeling of not belonging anywhere. And your father? I do not miss his anger, she answered without hesitation. But sometimes I wonder if he will ever regret how he treated me. Kele stopped planting and looked at her. Would you want to go back one day? To show him how you have flourished here? The question stunned her. Would you do that? Would you travel with me all the way back to Havenwood? I would do anything for you, my sea glass. If you need to close that door to your past, I will help you do it. Elara felt a wave of love so intense it almost took her breath away. Perhaps one day, she said finally. But not now. Now, I just want to build our life here. That night, at the communal dinner, Taranthe Shaman approached them, his face grave. Kele. Sea glass. I must speak with you. They moved away from the group and sat together by the ceremonial fire that always burned in the center of the village. What is it, grandfather? Kele asked, using the term of respect for an elder. Worrying news has come, Taran said. A lawman from the inland settlements has been asking questions in the trading posts. Asking about the coastal tribes, and specifically, about a red-haired woman with mismatched eyes living among us. Elara felt the blood run cold in her veins. My father, she whispered. We do not know for certain, the shaman replied. But we must be prepared. It may be necessary to move to a safer camp for a time. Where would we go? Kele asked. There is a winter camp in the northern inlets. It is well hidden. You would be safe there until the danger passes. Elara was overcome with a mixture of fear and guilt. This is my fault, she murmured. I have put you all in danger. No, Kele said firmly, taking her hand. You have done nothing wrong. If someone comes seeking trouble, it is because of their own ignorance and prejudice, not because of anything you have done. Kele is right, Taran confirmed. But we must be practical. Are you willing to make the journey if it becomes necessary? Elara looked at her husband and saw in his eyes the same resolve she felt in her own heart. We will go wherever we must, she said. This community welcomed me when I had no one. I will not let it suffer on my account. Then we will make preparations, Taran said. But let us hope it is not necessary. That night, lying in their bed and listening to the sounds of the ocean, Elara huddled close to Kele. Do you think we'll ever just be left in peace? She asked him. I think peace is not a place, my sea glass, he answered, stroking her hair. It is a state of the heart. And my heart is at peace whenever you are with me, no matter where we are. Mine too, she whispered. But as she fell asleep in her husband's arms, Elara could not shake the feeling that her past was coming for her, and that the peaceful days they had enjoyed were drawing to a close. At dawn, they were woken by the unmistakable sound of shod horses making their way down the treacherous path to the cove. Kele was on his feet in an instant, peering cautiously from the window. It is the lawman, he said, his voice tense. And many men with him. Elara felt her world lurch. The moment she had dreaded was here. And now, they would all have to face the consequences of her happiness. The clatter of hooves grew closer, accompanied by the jingle of spurs and the creak of leather. Elara dressed quickly while Kele continued his watch, counting the riders as they approached. There are a dozen men, he murmured. And a civilian they are escorting. A man I do not recognize. Elara's heart stopped. She had a terrible suspicion about who that civilian might be. Can you describe him? She asked, her voice a strained whisper. Tall, gaunt, dressed in black, riding a large black horse. It is my father, Elara breathed, feeling her legs begin to tremble. He has come for me. Kele turned from the window and took her by the shoulders, his grip firm and steadying. Listen to me, Seaglass. Whatever happens out there, you remember that you are my wife. You are here by your own choice. You are not a prisoner. But he will say I was taken. That I was forced. Then you will have to show him that is not the truth. Outside, loud voices began to echo through the cove. Taran had already gone out to meet the visitors, his voice calm but firm. Good morning, gentlemen. How may we help you? The harsh, familiar voice of Jedediah Vance cut through the morning air. I am here for my daughter. I know you have her, and I demand you return her to me at once. Your daughter? Taran replied calmly. There are no prisoners here, sir. Do not lie to me, heathen. Jedediah shrieked. Elara Vance is here, and you will bring her to me now. A man with a silver star on his vest stepped forward, his voice full of authority. I am Marshal Thompson. We have a report that a citizen is being held against her will in this camp. Elara took a deep breath and looked at Kele. I have to go out there. If I don't, they will hurt innocent people. We will go out together, Kele said, taking her hand. You are my wife, You will not face this alone. They stepped out of the lodge, hand in hand. Elara could see that the entire community had gathered, forming a silent, protective crescent behind them. The children hid behind their mothers, while the men stood watchfully, their hands empty so as not to provoke the armed posse. When Jedediah saw his daughter, his face twisted into a mask of fury. Elara, come here this instant, he roared from his horse. What have these savages done to you? They have done nothing to me, father, Elara answered, her voice surprisingly steady. I am here of my own free will. Lies. Jedediah spat. You have been brainwashed. Look at you, dressed like one of them. Elara looked down at her simple deerskin dress, embroidered with the colors of her mountain flowers. She did look different. But she also felt more like herself than ever before. I like how I am dressed, father. It is not savage. Marshal Thompson dismounted and walked closer, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. Miss Vance, your father has filed a report stating you were abducted and sold to these people. Is that true? No, Marshal, Elara replied clearly. I came here to marry Kele of my own volition. That's impossible. Jedediah bellowed. No decent woman would willingly marry a heathen. Kele took a step forward, his calm a stark contrast to Jedediah's rage. With all respect, sir, your daughter is my wife by the laws of my people and in the eyes of the Creator. We held a sacred ceremony 1 week ago. A pagan ritual is worthless. Jedediah snarled. Elara, stop this charade and come with me now. I am not going with you, father, Elara said, feeling that each word was an immense effort but an effort that had to be made. Here, I have found a home. A family that loves and respects me. Jedediah turned to the marshal. You see, she is clearly under some kind of spell or threat. I demand you arrest these savages and return my daughter to me. Marshal Thompson studied Elara carefully. Ma'am, are you being threatened in any way? Have you been harmed? No, Marshal. I am here because I want to be here. Look at her. Jedediah insisted, pointing a trembling finger. Her eyes full of madness, dressed like an Indian. This is not my daughter. I have always had these eyes, father, Elara replied with a deep sadness. And you have always hated me for them. I do not hate you. You are my daughter. I am your shame, Elara corrected. I always have been. You sold me to the first man who was willing to take me, regardless of what I wanted. A murmur went through the posse. Several of the men looked uncomfortable, realizing this was perhaps not the heroic rescue they had been led to believe. Marshal Thompson's brow furrowed. Is it true you arranged this marriage, Mr. Vance? Of course I arranged it. Jedediah snapped. It is my right as a father. So you admit your daughter was not abducted, the marshal observed coolly. Jedediah realized his mistake too late. That is, she did not understand what she was agreeing to. I understood perfectly, Elara interrupted, her voice ringing with newfound strength. I understood that you were selling me because you could not stand the sight of me. The difference is that Kele sees me as a gift, not a curse. Kele squeezed her hand, giving her the strength to continue. Marshal, Elara said, addressing the lawman directly. I give you my word of honor that I am here by my own choice. I married Kele because I love him, and he loves me. I am not a prisoner. I am a wife. This is preposterous. Jedediah exploded. Marshal, you have the authority to remove her. She is a citizen. A grown citizen, the marshal corrected, who has clearly made a choice. From what I have seen and heard here, there is no evidence she has been forced or deceived. But she's living with them. It isn't right. Mr. Vance, the marshal said with clear weariness. You arranged this union yourself. You cannot now complain about the consequences of your own actions. Just then, Nia stepped forward from the group of women, holding something in her hands. Marshal, if you will permit me, she said in her perfect English. The marshal nodded, and she held out a beautifully woven blanket, its patterns telling a story. In the center was the image of a woman with fiery hair and two colored eyes, working in a garden of bright flowers. We made this for Seaglass, Nia explained. It shows her place in our community. Does this look like the work of a captive, or of a beloved and respected woman? The marshal examined the blanket. It was clearly a labor of love. It's beautiful, he admitted. Lyra stepped forward as well. She has also taught us how to grow flowers we have never seen before. She has brought beauty and knowledge to our home. More members of the community began to speak, each sharing small stories of how Elara had enriched their lives. They spoke of her kindness, her wisdom with plants, her willingness to help anyone in need. Jedediah listened with growing frustration. It's all lies. She's manipulating you all. Father, Elara said softly. In all the years I lived with you, did anyone ever speak of me with such affection? Did you ever see anyone defend me the way these people are defending me now? Jedediah opened his mouth to reply, but no words came. The truth was too stark to deny. Marshal Thompson turned to his men. Mount up. There's no crime to investigate here. Wait. Jedediah cried. You cannot just leave her. Mr. Vance, the marshal said, his patience gone. Your daughter is an adult woman who has chosen her own path. I have no legal authority to force her to go with you, and no moral reason to do so. Then I will take her by force. You will not, Kele said, stepping protectively in front of Elara. If you try, you will have to go through me. The men of the tidal kin shifted subtly, forming a silent, unbreachable line. They showed no weapons, but their message was clear. The marshal saw the escalating tension. Mr. Vance, I suggest you accept the situation and withdraw peacefully. We don't want any unnecessary bloodshed. Jedediah looked around, realizing he was outnumbered, and that even the law seemed to be on their side. This is not over, he muttered bitterly. Yes, father, Elara said sadly, but with firmness. It is over, here and now. She took a step toward him, just out of his reach. I forgive you, she said, her voice low, and for him alone. I forgive you for all the pain you caused me. I have to, so I can be free. But I will not go back with you. This is my life now. And I am happy. Jedediah looked at her, his expression a storm of anger, hurt, and something that might have been regret. You are just like your mother, he finally choked out. Stubborn to the end. My mother was stubborn. Elara asked, surprised by this first real mention of her. She refused to marry me at first, Jedediah admitted, his voice breaking. Said she did not love me. I had to court her for months before she accepted. He looked away toward the sea. I did love her. I adored her. And when she died giving birth to you, I couldn't bear to look at you without seeing everything I had lost. For the first time, Elara saw her father not as a monster, but as a man broken by his own grief. "I'm sorry, father," she said softly. "I'm sorry my birth caused you so much pain. But I cannot keep paying for a sorrow that is not my fault." Jedediah closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he looked as if he had aged 10 years. "Take care of yourself, Elara," he said finally. I hope you are happy." He turned and walked to his horse without looking back. Marshal Thompson approached Elara one last time. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his hat. "If you ever need help, you can get a message to the fort at Silver Creek. We'll be listening." "Thank you, Marshal. Your understanding means more than you know." The lawman nodded and mounted his horse. The posse gathered behind him, and soon the procession was moving away up the cliff path, leaving a cloud of dust that slowly settled in the morning air. When the sound of the hooves had faded completely, Elara let herself fall into Kelly's arms, the pent-up emotions of the morning finally releasing in a flood of tears. "It's over," he whispered into her hair. "It's over, my sea glass. You are safe." The community surrounded them in a group hug, offering words of comfort and support. Elara was overwhelmed by the love and loyalty they had shown her. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you all. You are our family now," Taran said simply. "And a family protects its own." That afternoon, as the camp slowly returned to its normal rhythm, Elara sat by the sacred spring with Kelly, processing everything that had happened. "Do you think I did the right thing?" she asked him. "What do you think?" he countered gently. Elara considered the question. "I think for the first time in my life, I stood up for what I truly wanted. It was terrifying. But it was also freeing." "Then you did exactly the right thing. Do you think my father will ever change?" "I don't know," Kelly answered honestly. "But his healing is no longer your responsibility. Your responsibility now is to be happy." "And you are happy?" he asked, a gentle smile touching his lips. "More happy than I ever imagined possible," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. That night, at the communal dinner, Taran stood to make an announcement. "Today," he said, his voice resonating with pride, "our community faced a test, and we emerged stronger. Sea Glass has shown the courage to defend her new life, and we have all shown that when one of us is threatened, we all respond." He raised his cup of fresh spring water. "To Sea Glass, who has taught us that true beauty comes from a brave heart. And to Kelly, who had the wisdom to recognize that beauty." Everyone raised their cups in a cheer, and Elara felt her heart swell with a happiness so pure it almost hurt. Later, as they were preparing for bed, Kelly handed her a small, soft leather pouch. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it." Inside was a beautiful necklace made of silver and polished turquoise, with a pendant in the shape of a crescent moon cradling two small, round stones, one a deep ocean blue, the other a mossy forest green. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "The silver is the moon," Kelly explained. "The turquoise is the sea. And the stones, they are you. My moon. My sea. My sky. My sea glass." He fastened the necklace around her neck. When she looked at her reflection in a small piece of polished shell, she saw a woman she recognized, strong, loved, and radiant with joy. "Do you know the strangest thing?" she said, turning to him. "For so many years, I thought my appearance was a curse. But it was that very thing that brought me here. That led me to you. It was not your appearance that made me love you," Kele corrected gently. "It was your spirit. Your appearance was just what made me notice. It was the cover of the most beautiful story I have ever known." Several months later, Elara was working in her garden when she felt a familiar wave of morning sickness. She smiled, placing a hand instinctively over her flat stomach. That night she told Kele the news. He lifted her into his arms and spun her around under the stars, laughing with pure, unbridled joy. "Do you think it will be a boy or a girl?" he asked later, as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her belly. "It doesn't matter," she answered. "I just hope they have your kind heart and your wisdom. And I hope they have your fiery spirit and your eyes of the sea and sky," he said. "No matter what, they will be beautiful," Elara said with certainty. "Because they will be ours. And they will be loved from the moment they are born." As she fell asleep that night, Elara thought of the long road she had traveled from that terrible morning when her father had announced her fate. She had lost a life that was never truly hers, but she had gained something infinitely more precious, a life of her own choosing, a true and powerful love, and a family that valued her for exactly who she was. In her dreams, she saw a small child with fiery red hair and eyes as dark as the deep ocean, laughing as they ran through the gardens of the cove, chasing butterflies among the mountain flowers. And in that dream, she knew she had not only found her home, but her purpose, to create a new generation that would grow up knowing that to be different was not a curse, but a gift. The story of her journey became a cherished tale among the tidal Kinthe legend of Sea Glass, the woman who bridged the mountains and the sea, and proved that love could bloom in the most unexpected of places. What part of your own story have you learned to see as a strength instead of a weakness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if Elara's journey moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that touch the heart.